Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Real Birding Podcast, the show where we crack open the world of birding and talk about our own birding adventures. I'm Will Keller, coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I'm Caleb Putnam in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Guys, we're going to talk about ducks today, and waterfowl, and geese, and all these amazing birds that sometimes I get asked, are ducks birds? And I go, oh my goodness, if it's got feathers, it's birds, folks. But before we do that, we're going to touch on our bird quiz. Last week, we played for y'all the song of the Eastern Bluebird, and Eric Gustafsson got that correct. Good job, Eric. And this week we are going to play for you. We'll give you a little hint because ducks and waterfowl in general make weird sounds, but we are going to stay on theme and give you a call of a North American waterfowl species. Let us know what you think it is in the comments. All right, it just goes on like that. If you think you know what that is, drop it in the comments for a chance at a shout out at the beginning of next week's episode. This week, we are going to be talking to Matt Misewicz right after the intro. Let's do it. All right, y'all, we are super excited to welcome Matt to the show. Matt is a graduate research student under Dr. Ben Settinger at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, and he is studying the effects of spring phenology and density dependence on population dynamics of Arctic geese. He's an accomplished birder, photographer, and waterfowl hunter. Matt, welcome to the show. And why do you hate waterfowl so much? Just kidding.
Why do I hate waterfowl so much? Well, they're hard to study. You know, it's harder than rocket science. I once had a professor say, and that definitely holds true. That's probably my only hate, but that's a strong word.
The only joke I was making is that if you love them so much, why do you shoot them? But no, I get it. We love hunters, and we love the relationship that birders and hunters have.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to understand that relationship too. Is you can have a love for something and hunt it, and still have a love for it after you've harvested that, individual, animal, whatever. But yeah, just kind of, if you don't grow up with it, it can be hard. But yeah, we can chat about that even more too. So
absolutely.
Will, you're going for it here, right out the gate here, huh?
Pre-testing? No, I'm joking completely. Caleb and I'm not much of a hunter myself. And Caleb, you've been hunting before, haven't you, Caleb? You've been duck hunting?
Have. Yeah, in fact, I've worked with Michigan DNR on and off for several years, and actually worked directly in the DNR office in Lansing, Michigan for about a year and a half. So I've been around it a fair bit. And yeah, the guys insisted that I come duck hunting with them one time. And I also went upland game hunting on a kind of fundraising thing for National Audubon Society. So yeah, I've done it. I've done it a little bit. I've never been around it as a child. I've never been around firearms, but I got a few things too. I got a couple mallards and a couple pheasants and bobwhites during the upland game hunt. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Matt, can you speak at all to the importance of hunting for conservation dollars in the United States, especially?
Absolutely. Yeah. So starting with the federal duck stamp, obviously that's an absolute huge portion of conservation dollars going back into, refuge systems and hunting programs and stuff, which is essentially recycled right back onto the ground for habitat. When you have good habitat, you have birds, and it's just a, continuous cycle that started way back when, and continues to this day. And that's why it's so important to, waterfowl conservation, but also birds that, benefit simultaneously, like wetland birds and stuff like that. So
yeah, I'm thinking about places like Point Mouillet in Michigan, where I largely the funding comes from, and the purpose is to create habitat for waterfowl for hunters, I think. But it creates this fantastic habitat for shorebirds and even passerines and Forster's terns and all this stuff that we just probably wouldn't even have great access to in these huge numbers, but it exists because we have that funding. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like focusing back on the root of everything is, hunters and birders and people who like the outdoors are all in it for the same thing. And it's just overall, biodiversity and health of the ecosystem that you're trying to enjoy, and that's exactly what it benefits. And it's not always about waterfowl, and the more people you meet in the field, the duck hunters and everybody, they appreciate more than just just the waterfowl, which is great. So just got to keep that up.
Totally.
And to piggyback on this, Matt, when I worked with the Michigan DNR, it was with the MyBirds program, which is still going. And that's a collaboration between the hunting community and the birding community. We had a big round table, and it was always an interesting practice because these are two different types of outdoor recreation, right? They don't really talk very often. They don't really interact very often. And yet they have so much shared interest. And that was the whole point. And I really find with the birding community, it's just important to make sure that everybody understands that the hunters and in their terms of their excise taxes with their firearms and the ammunition and any kind of weaponry, that stuff is directly responsible for purchasing our state game areas.
Yep.
And it's everything. It's not just waterfowl. It is inland forested habitats. It is marshes. It is grasslands. It's everything. And birders need to step up their game, arguably, in many ways too, right? I mean, we don't have any public lands purchased by birder money that I'm aware of, other than directly through, federal taxes and so on, and NGOs too, of course. But I've long thought that the birding community should take after the hunting community in this manner and pony up some more money.
Yeah, and all through Pittman Robertson dollars, they're funding a lot of that. And man, I've been talking to some folks about this, reoccurringly. It's just like birders would likely be fine with paying some sort of tax on binoculars and spotting scopes and anything like that to, push better habitat, because again, it's just coming back to this common theme of everybody wants good habitat for birds. Nobody wants to be seeing, develop stuff and, losing state game areas and losing, some of these private lands that have, been turned over. And, if you can come together and try and find some common ground on a lot of this, it's like, it's going to benefit wildlife either way.
I think birdseed is the key. Having been in that program for a long time, I really think if you could have a tax that hit maybe 1 penny or a fraction of a penny per birdseed bag purchased, you'd immediately be in the tens of millions, and it could go straight into habitat protection. It's just going to be.
That's crazy. That's a great one for sure.
Because there, what are there, 40 to 70 million Americans that feed birds? It's something like that. So even if you just get pennies per bag, you're instantaneously going to have the money to buy large amounts of land. And it's just having the political will and somebody to put the program together to get that through Congress. I'm sure it can be done.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Like you said, just so many people feeding birds, and a fraction of that, would go a long way.
We'll have to get our lobbying department right on that, Caleb.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone.
Yeah. All right. Well, Matt, can we talk a little bit about the research that you're doing? I know you just got back from, is it YK Delta in Alaska?
Yeah. I just spent a couple weeks up on the Yukon Delta, contributing to long-term banding data. Primarily, so it's usually brant and cackling geese and white-fronted geese and emperor geese. White fronts and emperors kind of, I should say more so emperors, kind of have their own thing going on Kigiak Island. White fronts are kind of a lower priority, and then cackling geese and brant are a large focus. Cackling geese mainly by the Yukon Delta National Wildlife Refuge, and there's a brant camp that is kind of focused around the Tutaco brant colony right in the western portion of the Yukon Delta on the Bering Sea there. So I could probably point you to it. I don't know if you want to cut that little point out. Yeah, so Bethel's right there. And so we're working out on the coast. If you head straight west, you see Chivak up there to the Hooper Bay. We're just south of Hooper Bay, kind of right where your cursor is at down there.
Right there.
Wow, you're way up there.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you move a little bit south, you'll see Engiyarovik Bay. If you zoom in, it's right between Hooper Bay, and so it's somewhere in there. Yeah, it's right up the Kashunik River, large brant colony. So we're banding a lot of brant, a lot of cacklers. This year, unfortunately, the Arctic fox and red fox had an absolute time with the colony. So there was, 0% nest success in some of the largest portions of the colony, which we call the cash tut Great team of researchers working up there from Colorado State right now through the entire nesting season, kind of monitoring and putting boots on the ground in that area. I did that last year. This year, I kind of just came out for banding. What we did boat drives for banding, and then they did some helicopter drives as well. And essentially what it is kind of just hitting these areas where birds are in large densities, getting big teams, so like 10 to 14 people, putting them around the perimeter of an area, setting up a little catch pen net, and then driving them all into the net. And from there, I should preface by saying they're all in their molt right now, and they have their young with them. So they're flightless, so we can drive them all on the ground that way. Then once they collect in the pen there, we band them, take morphometric measurements, put them in a holding pen, and let them all go. I think the totals was like one of the best ever on record this year. I think it was over like 1,100 birds, just cacklers, that is. I think for Brant, I'm not entirely sure what they did on Brant numbers, but quite a few Brant, but they were, it was down quite an extreme amount from the past few years, obviously with that Arctic fox predation. So Arctic and red fox predation.
Are the foxes having a population high, or what's responsible for that?
Yeah, so it's kind of just a tumble of different things. So, we're seeing warmer temperatures, we're seeing marine mammal carcasses wash up. And if those foxes can get any sort of food to hold them through the winter, they're going to sustain. And especially when they hit these Brant colonies, they know like, oh, there's a massive colony of Brant here that we can get next year that's just going to produce and produce and produce until they move or decrease in size or something like that. So it's all about, just the foxes being able to sustain themselves easier than they ever have. Yeah, it's a tough one. And there's not a lot of management that can be done at National Wildlife Refuge for foxes, which is a shame. So it's there's a lot of folks that are working towards getting something done like that, a study, but yeah, it's difficult. It's kind of like a double-edged sword for these birds, which is really tough.
Am I right in thinking that the foxes, were they introduced, or did they just kind of work their way north because of various, maybe it's because there's more humans around, so there's, some safer ways for them to travel? I don't know. Yeah,
as far as I know, they were not introduced. I could be wrong there, but my understanding is that they really have expanded with the villages out there. Mm-hmm. You start getting like garbage dumps, you start getting, populations of people and animals just spread that way, and there's not much you can do about it. They're going to do what they can to spread across the landscape and sustain their own populations. And, just the way that they're affecting other native populations, red foxes are non-native up there. So they're the ones that we're primarily worried about. Arctic foxes, they've been there a while, but their populations are, doing pretty well in years that they have high food availability and stuff like that. But yeah, mainly the villages, just indirectly, they don't want them around, but it's just one of those things that, maybe like down in the central United States, coyote populations, we don't want them around, but there's plenty available for them to be, sustaining themselves. And it's just one of those things.
Yeah. It's one of the many ways that I think we as humans forget how influential we are in the landscape and how it just complicates management in so many levels. I'm even thinking about, like, not to change the subject, but like spotted lanternfly, and people worried about it moving in, and people say, well, wouldn't it have gotten here anyways? Like, let's just let it be here. And it's like, well, no, it just wouldn't have been here anyways. There's no way for it to have, A, gotten across the ocean, and then B, travel from city to city to city by hitching rides on trucks and stuff. It really complicates the job of people that are in charge of managing these populations of native species, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. It just makes it that much harder. And, it's our job to manage, and, we can only do what's feasibly possible. And so that's also sucks. It's just, considering some of those things in reintroduction and all that. I won't even get into that, but yeah, that's how it goes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So Matt, were there any polar bears present, and did you guys have any close calls with them? And how were the mosquitoes? Those are the two things that always jumps to my brain, is having never been in the Arctic tundra.
Yeah. So first off, I'll start by saying you should go if you didn't already need the push. Polar
I don't,
bears,
but I'll take it.
polar bears are a rarity down that far on the coast. They don't normally make it that far down, especially with the current sea ice extent. They're just not moving that far down. They're in the North Slope, near Utqiagvik, formerly Barrow. They're up there. We didn't run into any. We saw a few bear tracks. They're mostly black bears or like coastal browns, but there's not any number of those that's remotely, anything to worry about out there. You might see some when you're flying over in a helicopter, 50, 100 miles from camp, but I mean, it's a stretch. Mostly moose. See moose.
Are you carrying around guns or spray, pepper spray or anything?
No, neither. So
You're that comfortable. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, there's been sightings. I mean, there's been a couple sightings like near camp decades ago, but it's just, we're at a point now where it's like, we're pretty comfortable that we know it's out there, and the villages will usually catch on to it if they see one coming down from the North Coast.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit of the nitty gritty. You said that your research focuses around spring phenology and density dependence. What kind of trends are you looking to find, whether they exist or don't exist? Where's the meat and potatoes of this data that you're collecting?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the majority, if not all, of my data, I have a little bit that predates Craig, but Craig Ely from United States Geological Survey out of Anchorage, Alaska, he's retired now, has this just rich data set that includes over 20 years of cackling goose, white-fronted goose, emperor goose, a little bit of brant sprinkled in there, data from, it's nesting data, there's web tagging data, and I can expand a little bit on web tags after, speaking on Craig.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we did work out of Old Cheeback, which is in the lower Kashunik River. It's about an hour and a half boat ride north of where the Tatakok Brant colony was that I was speaking of earlier. It's a old missionary church that was built many years ago that they kind of has since transformed into a goose camp. It's been kind of decommissioned now, but we're starting to, hopefully get things going back out there in the next 5 or so years, who knows. But yeah, so Craig Ely from USGS just has this rich data set, and I've been lucky enough to be able to work with it and learn from him, and overall just be able to kind of do whatever I've been able to with it. And he's been the backbone of just holding down, pushing me in whatever direction I need to go. He's just a wealth of information. Did a lot of work on Thule geese, white fronts, and obviously the cacklers. This was actually his hat. So that picture that you had of him, he's wearing this hat in there. So
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I got to start that. So it made it back to Old Cheevac after it has to be over a decade now. So this year, so which was great to be back and just ban a crap ton of cacklers. So
Gotcha. And with the spring phenology part of it, the very limited knowledge I have of this is basically the timing of this is really specific because there's not very many resources famously in the Arctic. So the timing of when they arrive in relation even to when other species arrive is really important because the resource partitioning is really specific, right? Like if they arrive there too early or too late, they'll either starve to death because there's no food when they get there, or they'll starve to death because all the other birds got there before them and ate all the food. Is that basically how the situation plays out?
Yeah, they have a really, really tight window. And granted, they do use some staging areas as they're coming up the Pacific coast. A good portion of their population winters in the Klamath Basin in Oregon. So, they use kind of staging areas and stuff like that. And, when they arrive to like the Aleutian chain or somewhere, in Southwest Alaska, they'll use kind of, densities of other birds to determine like, okay, or like weather cue-ins to be like, okay, the weather on the breeding grounds is probably not ready yet. And, they'll get there when they need to. When we put out camp last year, I mean, there's ice everywhere and you couldn't tell the river from the grass. And, there was birds there somehow. And, they survived. So I'm sure some probably didn't, but you know, they do what they have to do to sustain themselves. And yeah, some get there and they are in better body condition. Other birds are in worse body condition and need more resources. It's just like that kind of individual heterogeneity that kind of plays a role in the population dynamics. It's an interesting part of the project. That's kind of an indirect part for sure. So yeah.
At what time of year do the cackling geese usually get to the delta?
Well, they start arriving pretty early. Man, it was like there was birds around when we got there in Chivak at the end of April, like the 28th, 29th of April, and there's feet of snow up there still.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, they find patches of open grass and they graze a little bit, and they got, you know, they're eating aquatic veg, they're eating anything they can to kind of get themselves, you know, through a couple weeks to where they need to start, you know, chop making a nest, and you know, then eventually staying on that nest, being constant in their incubation, and then, you know, ultimately laying enough eggs to where they can handle the amount of young that they need to raise, and then raise their young, molt their feathers, grow new feathers in, and get the heck out of there. It's like they have an extremely tight window, and it just creates, you know, an appreciation for these birds that have so little to run on. And it's like, man, it's like, how did they make it? It's insane. It's like, you got to want, I mean, they're small geese. They're really small bodied geese.
Oh yeah.
1,000 grams, 1,100 grams. They're not big. Like that's a decent sized cackler. And
yeah, they're called minimus for a reason, aren't they?
Yeah. They are. They are
minima.
very small. Minimas.
Yep. That's really cool. And it's it's another example, especially with these migratory birds. We've talked about it before. Like the gray cheek thrush comes up a lot. They probably don't breed quite as far north as that, although
we get them in town in Chivak. You see them running.
Wow.
Around. Yeah.
And that's an even longer migration than cackling geese. They're going all the way down to the Amazon and then coming back up. It's insane. Yeah, just wild.
Yeah, they're great. A lot of birds around the town. You know, there's eastern yellow wagtails, and there's cool. A lot of cool birds up there in these small villages. A lot of interesting stuff.
That was actually my next question for you, Matt. You're a step ahead of me. What, from a birder's perspective, just a layman birder here, if somebody were to go up to this area or to try to think about what it would be like to bird it, it's a very Russian, Asian feel, right? I mean, I would assume you have things like little stint, maybe. I don't know if you're there during migration or not, but like rough and sharp-tailed sandpiper.
Yeah.
Is that right? Do you have like wheat ears there, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, a lot of Siberian migrants or vagrants or migrants at this point. I think it's in their migration path. Yeah, wheat ear. I've had wheat ear, wood sandpiper. You know, little stint has been. I have not had little stint, but you know, there's definitely been some up and around there. The area that I'm at is extremely tough to bird. It's just like there's so much going on. The weather is just abysmal, usually. So it's like, at least during the migration times, like the entire time that I was there, it was raining and windy. But I mean, just the densities of shorebirds is just like it's unbelievable. The densities of shorebirds up there, and you know that there's just something, little stint or tending stint or whatever, you know, just flying around in these massive groups of rock sandpipers. And I was just getting ready to post a couple photos of like individual variation of these rock sandpipers. It's like you're seeing some in like Bering Strait subspecies, and you know, you got juveniles coming through, and you got like, man, they're just by the thousand. It's crazy.
Look how tiny the beak is on this Will. Did you know this? I didn't realize there were rocks or purple sandpipers that had short bills like this.
I had no idea. I wouldn't even know what to call that if I saw it. It doesn't really fit my my mental schema for that species. I got my life for rock sandpiper in January of this year, from about a quarter mile away in some hazy fog, a really terrible look, and with some Dunlin in kind of just outside Seattle. So that was cool. But yeah, nothing like the experience you probably just had over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I can send you guys some videos too. I mean, right outside of camp, you walk out the door and it's like they're sitting on the cut bank by the thousand. And you know, when the tide comes in, these birds are just like I don't know, 10,000 just casually, and they're sitting at your feet. You can just like pick them up, and it's crazy. They're
Yeah.
just in such high density that it's a stat. It's amazing.
Yeah, you get that a lot with a lot of these Arctic breeding birds, especially shorebirds. I'm picturing like the Pierrot to Scornia, or up and down the Lake Michigan shoreline. When you get those migrating Arctic breeding shorebirds, they'll
Yeah.
basically walk right between your legs. It's like they have no idea that you could possibly be a threat.
Oh yeah.
Unlike a lot of other things where killdeer might come close to you, but usually it's just because they're trying to scare you away from their nest or whatever. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, there was talks of doing like a mark recap study with these rock sandpipers, because it's like they're there every single year.
Hmm.
It wouldn't be too hard to catch. You set up a mist net down the cut bank, and you can catch like 40 to 50 easy. They did a kind of a similar study with black turnstone out there, and yeah, it's like you have high densities of birds to work with. It's a tough area to work, but it's like if they're there, and you can do the work. So
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch on with this is that so many of these birds, I mean, we think of it as North America, and it is, but it really is where the sort of East meets the West, because the vast majority of these birds are actually wintering in the old world in places
yeah,
like Vietnam and Thailand, and probably further north up the Pacific Rim as well.
yeah.
Uh, but it's not like all these birds are coming down and wintering in Mexico or California or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. It's like you got all these flyways kind of feeding to Alaska. You got the East Asia, Australasian flyway. Like you've got the Pacific flyway. You've got just everything kind of coming into one. And you've got birds that, some of these white fronts are flying down the mid continent and hitting, central Canada into maybe the northern United States. And then you have other, tules and the Pacific race of white fronts flying down the Pacific coast. And then you got a couple different subspecies of cacklers, that are splitting around Alaska.
Hmm.
It's an extremely diverse place, and lots of different birds move through there. And it's like I don't even want to see like the actual list of birds that I'm missing, because it would just be like just crazy. We just had like a random flyby slatyback gull, and it was like, okay,
Random.
um, yeah, very random. It's just happens. I'm trying to think of anything else that stands out. Just like sitting in camp, like I don't even know.
No blue throats.
No blue throats. It's an extremely flat landscape out there. There's no, at least on the coast where we're at, there's hardly any elevation change. It's all flat. There's no bushes. There's no trees. The tallest thing is probably like a dwarf willow, which may be like 4 inches tall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's extremely vast, and once the season progresses, the grass obviously starts getting taller, maybe like, 8 to 10 inches in camp at most. But it's like, it's usually grazed down in years with high brant abundance, and the brant were way down. So it's like everybody's talking about how tall the grass is, because the brant usually graze it down to nothing. And it's one of those things where it's like, dang, this is like sad. It's like we need to get a lawnmower out here and cut get the grass, because it's normally short.
I have a visual here. I'm a little bit lagging behind y'all with the discussion, but I believe there are transmitter results from northern wheat ears in Alaska that you would think maybe they would just go to, like, I don't know, the Koreas or at most Southeast Asia. And the actual answer is they're going all the way down to Africa. So it's mostly east-west migration. Just incredible how they hang on to that winter distribution. And even if they do cross the Bering and go across the other continent, they still come back where they're supposed to be in the wintertime. And it's the same thing with long-billed dowitcher and sandhill crane. Both of them cross the Bering into Russia each summer, and then they come back the other direction and come back to like Indiana.
Yeah, very. In common birds that you see up there like that you just start to grow an appreciation for, like sandhill cranes and Savannah sparrows and just stuff like that. It's like, man, this Savannah sparrow is singing on top of my tent right now. Like, I wonder where he's flying to, because their range is just so, it's so broad, and you never know if it's, where he's heading. So
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
All right, before we wrap up, it would be remiss not to mention and show some examples of your photography, Matt. You are one of the foremost, at least according to what I see on my feed, one of the foremost waterfowl photographers in North America. Your stuff is just drop dead gorgeous, dude.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a good one. It's definitely more than a passion, and it stems from my passion for research in waterfowl and waterfowl species across the country. You know, from the Mississippi River to North Dakota to Alaska. You know, I've been to some pretty amazing places, and I'm fortunate enough to be doing work in these places on some pretty amazing species. So, you know, being able to work closely with them is brought me and my camera along with, and so I've been able to see some pretty cool things, you know, like displays like this and flight, and yeah, it's amazing. I'm super lucky to be able to do what I do and go the places I go and meet the people I meet, and it really brings it full circle with the photos for sure, because everyone has a story.
Do you have a favorite story of waterfowl photography?
Oh man, that's actually really tough. So it's got to be between two. The first one is that spectacled eider that you were just up at. I remember it being really early in the morning. Got out of my tent, and I knew I had this pair of, you know, spectacled eiders that were utilizing a wetland. I ended up just like hanging out of my tent vestibule with my camera and just watching these birds, you know, preen, and this male was doing a little bit of displaying, and they continued to use a small wetland, and that was just like, this is my favorite bird. I should have, you know, started with that. Just being able to be around a bird that spends, you know, 95 to 98% of its life in the middle of the Bering Sea, south of St. Lawrence Island, diving hundreds of feet into the Bering Sea, freezing, massive waves, you know, just to see an organism like this that lives such a hard life and such a beautiful bird, you know, being able to work up there around them, with them, near them, monitor their nests is just, it was just amazing. So that experience was great. Another great experience, I'll try and make it quick, is like that dang tufted duck in St. Clair Shores. Something about like the high latitude ducks just gets me, but yeah, those and sea ducks. But anyway, this tufted duck in St. Clair in Michigan, I like paid this guy to take me out on a shitty boat to go around the corner and get some photos of this thing. And it was at the point where it was like everybody was leaving. They got their like distant looks at it. And I was like, I drove all the way over here after class. Like I skipped the class to come look at this thing. I was like, saw this guy coming in on this little John boat. And like, look, I'll like buy you a case of beer and give you whatever I have in my wallet to take me out and try and photograph this thing.
He did it. He agreed to do this?
He did it. Yeah, he did it. He
Incredible.
said, you know, you don't owe me a thing. Like, jump in. Let's go find this thing. And he was a duck hunter. He was a duck hunter, and we went out the channel, went out on the big water in this little like 14-foot John boat. It sounded like a lawnmower. It was just so loud. I had a little tiller on it. And we sat on this like little marsh flat with a big heap of cattails in the middle of it. We parked the boat on the side of it. And I was like, let's just sit here and wait for the birds to pass, because they were like feeding in it. It was feeding in a massive group of scaup. And all these birds were putting down in the water. And I was like trying to find them. Like, this is not going to happen. This is a needle in a haystack. There's not a shot that this bird, like, I'm going to get like, I was so worried about getting this bird isolated by itself. We're like, yeah, it's going to be a good background, you know, versus like trying to actually just get any sort of usable photo of it. And I saw it, I laid eyes on it, and I'm like, just sit here, don't move. This thing is going to float right in front of us somehow. By the grace of God, it's going to float in front of us. And it did. And I spent like I spent all of my luck on this single bird. But it, you know, I have a great story to tell about it. And yeah, it did, one of the few birds in photography that did what it was supposed to.
Incredible.
And,
Yeah.
I'm glad it was that one. That was a really fun. And he was like, you know, what's so special? Looks just like the other 2,000 that are diving out there. I'm like, yeah, well, this this thing has had a pretty substantial migration journey here, and he was asking if it was going to stick around for the hunting season. I'm like, if you can pick this thing out of a group of scaup during the hunting season, shoot it. You know, go ahead. More power.
Yeah, you earned it.
But it's like,
That's
yeah,
so funny.
He was great. I couldn't have asked for, a nicer guy to bring me out and just, make a story. So, yeah, it was great.
That's
so Matt,
cool.
I actually worked in the black tern colony at that exact spot in St. Clair Flats.
Yeah.
In those John boats, but the DNR boats. And it reminded me when you were talking about this, the excitement that hunters didn't realize they have for non-game birds or for birds that they're not hunting is palpable. And when you can talk with them and have that back and forth interaction, you can get that excitement going in both directions. Birders, once birders realize that hunters are conservationists, that even though they take a few birds, they're adding more to the population than they're taking out, and they're managing it to make sure the populations don't come down. Once they let that go, we can all share the same excitement over it, and we do. It's just a matter of talking and having these experiences. I've had so many hunters out there who they learn about the yellow-headed blackbird that's in the St. Clair Flats colony, or the possibility. We had a little gull in the black tern colony one summer, an immature bird, checking out the mats. They were just through the moon with excitement over this stuff. They didn't know a lot about it, but they were so thrilled. So that really struck a nerve.
Yeah, and on that topic, I'll just babble one more time and plug just private landowners. They know and care much more about wildlife on their private lands than a lot of us users think. And I learned this by working out in the prairies of North Dakota, where there's a large amount of public and private land. And working with some of these private landowners, these ranchers that were, ranching cattle for ranch grass, anything. Worked on a project with Dr. Susan Fuigi, Taylor Linder out of University of North Dakota, on a grazing project with songbirds, and you would be amazed how much these landowners care about what's on their land. They know when the meadowlarks arrive. They know when they start singing. It's like these guys care about the land. They're stewards of the land, and you look at them and you're just like, oh, they wouldn't give a crap about birds. That's a terrible thing to say. When you start talking to these guys and understanding their lifestyle, understanding what they're doing, and it's the same with hunters. It's like they care, and it just gives you a little bit of we're good. We're still doing this. The shared love for wildlife and wild things is there. So.
Yeah. And I think to add the cross-pollination of our different, skill sets and expertises and sharing that with each other and being really open for those conversations, I think is so important, especially now.
Definitely. Yeah, that is crucial. Trying to push scientific standpoints on the people, and not when they don't understand, or we're trying, don't tell me how to manage my land. And it's like, some scientists get offended by that. And it's like, how to manage your land better than anyone does. And so understanding that and building those relationships with hunters and private landowners and, folks like that is just, it's essential for the future of conservation and science. So.
Yeah. And with the hunting excise tax revenues coming down every year, the projections, as I understood it, are anywhere from 30 to 50 years from now. They're going to either have to sell off public lands, or they're going to have to get rid of a lot of the employees because there won't be enough money to fund it anymore. And so something has to replace that. And birders, this is a call to action to all of you all out there. How are we going to do this? We need to game plan it now. We need to get in front of this problem. We need more nonpartisan conservation action across the board. We need conversations between conservatives and liberals to take place so that everybody is on the same page. Losing public lands is not something we can allow to happen under our watch for our grandchildren, so that when they're adults and when they have their grandchildren, all of these animals, all of this healthy ecology is still there, because we are going to lose it if we don't take action.
Yeah. It's a public trust, public trust. Keep investing in it. Keep buying your duck stamp, regardless if you're a duck hunter or not. All that money goes right back into conservation. So
yes, sir.
Buy 1, buy 2, buy 10. And the best bird is on it this year. So
What's that?
spectacled eider.
Oh, you already said, of course.
Yeah.
That's got to be
gotta
that's a
get on
niche
it.
one. Has there been an eider on the duck stamp before? Do you know?
Yeah, 1992 when they were listed, it was on the stamp.
Okay, apparently you are the right guy to ask. You probably know every single year for every single bird, huh?
Well, no, I'm not quite that good. I only know spectacled eider because I got a coffee mug with a 92 stamp on it, and from when they did like the original first release of the stamp, they gave some coffee cups out. I bought one on eBay. I'm like, this is gotta have it. Best
Awesome.
bird, gotta have it on a coffee cup.
I want to ask one last question, Matt, and this has been a fantastic conversation. So this image that I'm pulling up of yours, tell me, how did you get this close to this Western grebe, and what lens and body are you using to get a result this incredible?
Oh man, I wish I had a cool story. This is just these grebes are insane. They're extremely tame for whatever reason. I don't know if it was just the pair that I was photographing. It's in Harriet Lake in North Dakota. These birds just like there's a massive colony there that supports both Western and Clark's grebe. And these birds were just foraging and they swam right past me. This is
You weren't on a boat?
I was not on a boat. I was on shore.
Wow.
I was shooting. I think I was shooting out of a floating hide here. So I mean, I was camouflaged. I wasn't wearing like neon clothes or anything for them to swim past. But I'm in the water on like a floating platform that I built, and I have my camera mounted to it. And yeah, they just were swimming past. And it's, I have some powerful equipment. My camera's 45 megapixels. I had a 500 millimeter lens, no extenders or anything. And yeah, they'll allow you to get quite close because for whatever reason they were comfortable.
Wow,
that's a big boy lens.
Yeah, it's hurts the back when you got to carry it a while, but other than that, I can't.
Pocketbook too.
Yeah. I look at that later and then just say, no, it's all worth it.
Got to have your priorities straight, right?
Yeah. The photos is definitely a priority. So,
all right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Matt. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Great seeing you guys again. And yeah, it's great. Love what you guys are doing here on Real Birding Media. It's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Great to see you, man. And yeah, maybe I remember doing the talk for y'all at Michigan State back when you were still in school there. Maybe we can see each other in person at some point here in the future. It'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, keep in touch, both of you.
For sure. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Go see some birds.